All right, so getting ready to do the last of the major repairs on this old 70s Martin. So I'm getting ready to do the glue up of the back, which is separated here, including the neck block, from about here to here. I've got everything I need. I've got my spool clamps out and ready. I've got 6 per side, and I've already preset the height on those so they'll go on, and I won't have to turn them much to get them to clamp up because I don't want to sit there and spend time winding the clamp all the way down. I preset the height to where they're just about within 1/8 of an inch or so, okay? Makes it quicker. I've got a syringe full of glue and a 18 gauge needle on there to help get it in. I'm probably gonna I'll use it here where it's thinner, where it's not as open as much. But I think back here, on this edge, I'm gonna just take it straight from the bottle. I've got a narrow nozzle on it. But I also want this to get in underneath that neck block, okay? And then we'll clamp it up. I've got a bunch of paper towels to handle glue squeeze out, and I've got my warm water bin, kept warm, room temperature water, and I just need to get a clean rag there from my pile. So we'll get that in there and get it all damp and ready to go. Squeeze out the excess. I just want it damp. I don't want it really wet. I'm going to wring it out here. Hang on. Okay, so that is ready to go. I'm not going to put it back in the water now that I've wrung it out. I'm going to keep it ready to go. Take a paper towel, dry my hands off. So, and I've also just put these pieces of wood here to hold the binding out of the way. I don't want to glue the binding on now. Once this repair is done, then I will glue the binding on. All right, so to start out, I'll tip the camera up here. I'm just going to put some glue in here in the seams right here. I can get in there behind the binding and inject some glue into that separation. I'm going to tilt it up like this so I can see what I'm doing a little better. Okay. I'm going to try and get putting the beveled edge of the syringe, of the needle rather, down against the bottom. There's some good glue. I'm going to move this just so I can get in there underneath it. Okay. Now I'm going to do the other side. I want to do everything with the syringe while I've got it out. And I can get underneath that piece of molding that I'm using to hold the wood out. Okay, that's all looking really good. I'm going to continue with this just because it's working and I've already loaded it up with glue. Okay, now I'm going to lay this down and work on getting some underneath the neck block, because that's right about where the neck block is. So I'm going to go in a little deeper here, put some down. And of course, any squeeze out from that I'll have to wipe up from the inside. Now I want to come out here on the edge and put some glue. I want to get that whole neck block surface covered. Again, the old rule of gluing like this is if you don't get squeeze out, you didn't use enough glue. Continue along this side. Come back to here, put some in here. So again, I've got the beveled side up against of the syringe against the back of the guitar, that flat surface there where it goes to the kerfing. I'll put a little bit on both surfaces now. I just need to find that beveled edge again. Kind of lost it as a glue. There it is. Flat down this way. Okay, good. There we go. That's good. A little more here. All right, now I'm going to begin the clamping process. I'm going to start with a couple of clamps right over the neck block, just to hold everything in place. Get it started. Now I have a little bit of initial glue squeeze out. I'm going to work that out. I have to get a Q-tip for a couple of these, which is fine. Okay, now I'm going to start putting on my spool clamps. Whoops, I'm on the fingerboard. Let me move that one over. There we go. I wondered why I was having a weird sensation to it. I had it on the fingerboard. I want to be on the side of the fingerboard. That's better. Now I'm going to work from side to side. So I'm going to put one over, and then I'll remove that big clamp and get a spool clamp in there. I may just leave that big one on there. Let's see. No, I'm going to replace it with a spool clamp. I don't want to have that. I want to get right up next to the heel. I have to look at that one. Okay. So I'm just going to continue putting spool clamps on. I'm going to put one more here, and then we'll deal with some glue squeeze out because I don't want to give that squeeze out time to set. And yeah, it looks like I'm going to have to use Q-tips on it. That's okay. All right, one more over here. Now I can take these out of there. Because the spool clamp, or the spool clamps are going to hold the binding out of my way. Okay, another pass on the squeeze out that I've got so far. Okay. Put another couple of, oops, I've got some here I want to get. Good. There we go. I'm going to take this one off now and get a big clamp right there next to the neck heel, and then we'll get a big one on the neck heel after this one, another way. Okay, so I'm just going to continue putting clamps on it and dealing with the glue squeeze out. Like I said, a couple spots I'm going to have to go in with a Q-tip and get that glue squeeze out that way. And then the wet rag to deal with the last of it, and that works just perfect. I've also got these little bamboo forks that I like to use for getting glue squeeze out. You can get them in the section where they sell toothpicks. They're just a little, they have a nice flat edge like a screwdriver that works really good for this kind of, I use them for a lot of different things in the shop. All right, that's the process. Just going to add a couple more clamps, and then what we have to do is wait for it to dry and take the clamps off, and then we'll glue the binding back down. I'll see you when we're ready to do that. All right, continuing on with this old Martin D28. It's been under clamps for a couple days now, so I'm going to take the clamps off and have a look at where we sit. While I have the clamps on, I did do some touch-ups to those couple small pieces of the kerfing that were broken off. It's not real pretty, but they're back where they need to be to reinforce that area. So now I'm going to go ahead and put these clamps in the box. I'll be right back if we are done with those. All right, now I'm just going to check to see that the binding is going to go back together. There's a little gap. Oh, I see it. There's a little glue spot there. Because any little bit of glue squeeze out that happened here that I didn't catch is going to have to be corrected. That all looks good. The binding is going to go right back in place with a little spot right there. Let me see what that looks like. Okay, I see it. There's some little flakes in there. We'll get rid of them before we... that's why, again, you dry fit before you put glue on, because any chance of fixing what might be a minor issue when you put glue on is gone. This looks really good. So I'm just going to test it for that it's a secure joint. Yep, we are good. Everything looks good here. Yep, everything looks really good. All right, so the last piece of this is I've got that little piece of the center fill to put on right there between this the neck block and this last brace. We're going to go ahead and put that in. Bridge has already been reset, and while that's clamping in, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 frets to replace. The first 7 are pretty gone. You can see the first 5, if we get the light on them just right, there's some really good divots in there that I'm pretty sure by the time if I try to level those out, it's gonna not be a lot of wire left. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that partial refret. As the goal was to not do a cosmetic repair, but to get this thing back to being structurally sound and playable, and that's gonna affect the playability. Those first 7, I might even do the 8th one and not charge them for it just because it's got a couple flat spots on the B&E. So let me get that back strap glued in. I'll go do that, and then while that's doing, we'll start pulling the frets. All right, so what I've done to get the binding to all fit back in place is I've gone through with my micro chisels. I've got 3 different sizes of these micro chisels and got out any little high spots. There's one there, got the last one. A couple little pieces of wood stuck to the binding that were making it stick up. So I've dry fitted it all the way around. I've got a good fit. And this is not the binding problem that we've seen on some of the early 2000s Martins where the binding shrunk. This binding has not shrunk. It comes together pretty well. It just came off when the back came apart. I think this, like I said, it sat for a long time. So I've got a bunch of masking tape. I've already taped off the sides like I would do on a normal binding repair where I was going to use the binding glue or super glue because I don't want to get glue on the finish, but I'm going to do this one with wood glue because again the binding is not deformed, it's not coming out of the corners, it just came loose when the back came off. I really feel like all I have to do is glue it back in place. So doing it with the wood glue will give me more working time. So I've got just a flat paintbrush or artist brush, and I'm going to work glue in on both surfaces. I'm going to do the wood on the guitar first. Okay. Now originally this this binding was probably put on with the, I think it's acetone based glue where it would have melted the plastic. And I'm not using that because that stuff, boy, if you get it on the finish, you're done. Because it is a heavy solvent-based glue. However, this binding also has, in many spots, it's got wood left on it. So I think that the wood that's stuck to the binding will work well with wood glue to glue the binding back in place. And like any good glue joint, I'm going for a glue squeeze out, because if you don't get a little squeeze out, you didn't use enough glue. And that's what the tape is for. It'll handle any of that. And of course, I'll work with a wet rag to clean it up as I go. Okay, so we are ready to start putting it in place. And I'm going to have my, whoops, sorry, get my wet rag here. Got my clean, dry cotton wet rag. I'm going to bring it out over the trash can. Take more of the moisture out of it. Good. There we go. And I've got paper towels all ready to go to dry my hands off. A couple more paper towels here ready to go. So now I'm just going to start working the binding into place, doing a paper towel glue squeeze out, and putting the tape on to pull the binding into place. Pushing it into place, getting the dry glue squeeze out, boom. How am I doing on this side where it looks good? Again, I'm not really worried about the glue getting on the blue tape. And yeah, there's going to be a little scraping and fitting of the binding when we're done. So this is why I always have all these pieces of tape all pre-cut and ready to go, and I've got the ends bent over so I got an easy way to pull it off. Whoops, okay. Got the glue squeeze out here with the wet rag, and then go back over with a paper towel to dry it off so the tape will stick. One more piece after this one. All right, now I can go do the other side. Make sure the tape is all stuck down. That looks good. I'm gonna just repeat that process on this side. All right, last installment on this old 1975 D28. That was in pieces. And going back through everything we had to do, I'm going to tilt this down. The back from about here down was separated, and the center seam was completely open, and the binding was flopping off, so the back was off. So when you pick the guitar up by the neck, it was real floppy because it wasn't anchored back there. There were 3 braces. The 3 top braces in the back were completely off. There was a piece of the center seam, my cleat, I guess you'd call it, up at the neck block that was off. And several of those were very, very loose. I had to glue in there. I had a crack right here in one of the top braces. The bridge had to be reset. It was lifting off. The fingerboard extension was loose. Had to glue that back down. Replaced frets 1 through 8, as the first 4 were really divoted. The first 2 were divoted on all 6 strings, and then up to 8 were showing some loss here. And I thought, the rest of the frets were really good, so I'm just going to replace the first 8 and put it back to just playing great. No fret problems at all. It's got a nice fall away. Last thing I did was a setup with Martin 12 to 54s. I only had to shave about 10-15 thousandths off just the low E side of the saddle. And it's got 4 64s here and 6 64s here, a little 6.5 64s. But it is, and glue the binding back on. And this is like a lot of these older guitars that I've done this kind of work on, is the customer says, don't worry about the finish. I just want it structurally sound, so there's no issues. So any place that there was a crack or a seam where the finish cracked a little bit there, like where on the binding, that has not been resprayed. There was a crack in the top right here that I had to cleat and glue. There was a big crack right here in the back that I had to cleat and glue, but again, those have been left unrefinished. So you can see where they were. But it's all set up, tuned up, give the customer a call. Sounds great, just like a Martin should. See you on the next one.